Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, he is in the hot seat right now as a report may have just shown his true colors. It's also possible that this will be seen as proof that Alvin Bragg is in this case against former President Donald Trump just to further interfere with the 2024 presidential elections. A report shows that the DA has been downgrading felony charges for some time now, bringing a majority of them down to just misdemeanors. Now, as we all know, Donald Trump's case was a misdemeanor that has been upgraded to a felony, something that's not common for DA Bragg given his track record. And it also doesn't help that the judge in Donald Trump's hush money trial is someone that many analysts find to be biased against the former president. Donald Trump himself has spoken out about this and has actually called the entire case a scam. The most recent update is that the jury has finally been decided on. Now, besides that, many onlookers say that the former president is looking even more exhausted by the day as court proceedings continue to press on. Now, even though 12 people have already been selected with one alternative, some experts believe that Donald Trump has most of his work cut out for him, especially since most of the people generally do not favor him at all and would probably admit that they can't be impartial when it comes to Donald Trump.
Bill Holloway, former assistant district attorney, retired U.S. Navy, former police officer, and legal advisor to Georgia Sheriff's Department. Look, we don't want to get into the individuals on this case that they're trying to seat the juries. They're having a hard enough time as it is, without too many details out there. This was going to be hard anyway. This is New York City. This is where Trump made his name.
Harris, great to be with you as always. You know, the Sixth Amendment guarantees all criminal defendants a lot of rights, but the one that we're focusing on here is the right to an impartial jury. And of course, due process also says you have the right as a criminal defendant to an impartial judge. Those are the themes that we're seeing coming out of the courtroom. There are major questions about whether the lawyers for Donald Trump can, in fact, find an impartial jury. And that is ultimately the judge's job. And the judge, of course, himself has to be impartial and unbiased. And there have been claims, and some of them I think have at least some merit, that Judge Merchan himself might be somewhat biased against Donald Trump. So what we're seeing the setup for, I'm afraid, is a trial that the result of which, irrespective of what that result is, the result might not be something that future historians will look back on and say this trial achieved justice.
Now, before we really get into this, guys, all I ask is that you guys take 1 second, hit the like button for the video. I totally appreciate you guys. And I also want to thank you guys so much for always sharing these videos on Facebook and on Twitter. All right, so now a lot of information has actually come out about the jurors. They're from many different walks of life. There's an investment banker, a physical therapist, a teacher, a security engineer. I mean, just to name a few of them. Many already believe Donald Trump won't get a fair trial here, given that it's the home court advantage for President Biden and Democrats. Some argue that all he needs is just one juror to be on his side and this will all be done, which kind of makes the odds very high if all of these people will be impartial. That's because there's a huge problem with what Alvin Bragg has been pushing regarding his case. He keeps saying that this is a misdemeanor that was upgraded to a felony because, according to him, Donald Trump committed it with intent to commit another crime. The problem is that he never mentions this supposed other crime at all. Now, before we really dig deep into this, did you guys know that Alvin Bragg has been known to downgrade felonies to misdemeanors? Yep. So according to his office, Alvin Bragg downgraded a whopping 60% of felony cases last year. He reduced 938 of the most serious charges in 2023, 834 of which were brought down to misdemeanors. Can you believe that? I guess Alvin Bragg is going by his word because he released a memo as soon as he took office. He said that he would only seek prison time in the most severe cases. I guess that answers the question as to why New York is so dangerous right now. In fact, it's so dangerous that Alvin Bragg has actually been called a soft on crime district attorney. One instance where this is apparent is when he let men who were accused to have beaten up 2 NYPD cops just walk free without repercussion. And after he lets them go, they go and commit even more crimes. But I guess that's nothing compared to the hush money trial that Donald Trump's on, right? Who cares about crime and beating up NYPD police officers when you can interfere in the 2024 presidential elections? Allegedly, of course. So Holloway also said that there's no victim in this case, much like what Donald Trump is facing with AG Leticia James. How can there be a crime when there's no victim? Now again, Alvin Bragg hasn't specified which crime he's accusing Donald Trump of. And this is a big deal because he's putting that behind his entire argument. Now, Ashley Merchant, who's defending one of Donald Trump's co-defendants in the Georgia election interference case against DA Fani Willis, says that knowing the case is important for double jeopardy. If the prosecution fails to specify what was done in the indictment, how would anyone know if any defendants have already been on trial for it? For anyone who might not be aware, the double jeopardy clause prohibits anyone from being prosecuted twice for the substantially same crime, which is why Donald Trump's defense team has to be made aware as to what the crimes he's being accused of or being charged for. Many still say that this entire case against Donald Trump is one that's filled with bias. We know that the judge's own daughter worked with VP Kamala Harris and President Biden. She's also supposedly received millions of dollars from Representative Adam Schiff. Now, it's also alleged that Merchant's wife worked under New York Attorney General Leticia James. So yeah, looks like a very lopsided case of experts.
So Donald Trump was able to post a $175 million bond. He did it with a bond agency. Now AG Leticia James says the agency that wrote the bond for Trump is not qualified to do so. So she's reportedly beginning the process of claiming Trump's properties. Is this ever going to end?
Well, I'm going to call this an administrative or bureaucratic technicality that's going to have to be worked out. It does appear as though the bond company doesn't have all of the requirements necessary in terms of what they provide to the state of New York. I believe that's something they're going to be able to work out. If not,
forgive me for interrupting.
Sure.
It's not that they don't have the money, though, right?
Right. Well, it's not just the money. It's additional money on top of it as the surety for that money. So there has to be certain requirements that are satisfied in the state of New York. I believe this company comes out of California. I think that as they work that out, the court is going to have tolerance for Donald Trump working that out to make sure that that's done appropriately. I don't see a building getting seized in the meantime.
Now, we can't dismiss egos in all this because Leticia James ran on the basis of her going after Trump. She said she was going to pursue him until she got him in jail, etc. She lost hugely with that appeals court that reduced that initial fine that the judge who was working with her pulled out of the air, $454 million, reduced it by about 2/3. Is this her way of getting some kind of payback after that loss?
Well, I think that took the wind out of her sails. You know, it seems as though she's desperate to move into one of these buildings. Maybe she should just fill out an application for rent in one of those buildings. But she wants in, and I think she wants to be able to get that victory before the election. It's going to be very difficult for her to do so because I think the appellate court is going to take its time, and they're going to have to go through all of these calculations. This is a huge case for them to get a decision before the election.
And since we've already talked about her, I have a new update on Leticia James. She now has to prove that Donald Trump's appeal bond is invalid. Failure to do so would actually cost her some money because Donald Trump's team says that she would be responsible for the cost of this back and forth. Leticia James had questioned if Donald Trump had actually met the conditions for the $175 million bond that he has to secure. Some critics of Leticia James say that she's just doing this because she's eager to get a hold of Donald Trump's properties. That, and she's disappointed that the bond was lowered. Is this a sign of bias from Leticia James? Now at this point, we're getting closer and closer to making history. However, it's one that many say is unfortunate because Donald Trump has become the first ever former president to be charged with criminal activity. However, the former president has used the sudden popularity boost to try and campaign through these trials. In fact, donations have spiked when legal threats were brought against him. But of course, we're gonna have to wait and see how all this unfolds, as this may very well change the landscape of the 2024 presidential elections. Now, as always, I'm gonna do my best to keep y'all up to date, up to speed on everything. Appreciate y'all hitting the like button. Thank you for sharing these videos on Facebook and Twitter, and I'm gonna see you guys on the next one.